Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. President Trump held a news conference this afternoon following the big 2018 midterm election. It became very confrontational at times, with the president sparring words with CNN's Jim Acosta. Take a listen.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way.
The president told reporters that he has to be aggressive because he isn't treated fairly by the overall media. He also talked about Republican gains and losses last night and believes that Republicans and Democrats can still get things done in the House. Tiana Lowe with the Washington Examiner joins us now with some analysis of the president's post-election news conference and of the election itself. Welcome, Tiana.
Hi, thank you for having me.
First of all, your take on the president's heated exchange with CNN's Jim Acosta.
So naturally, what Acosta does is hardly reporting. It's closer to grandstanding than anything. And I don't think that President Trump is wrong to be upset with it. That being said, Trump does himself no favors when he calls the media blanket enemy of the people. It makes it a little bit more difficult for him to correctly criticize when reporters like Acosta do use an open forum just to try and get a viral clip to prove that they are part of the resistance.
Trump says he has to be aggressive, Tiana, because he's not treated fairly by the media. What are your thoughts on that?
So, again, my issue with the media's treatment of Trump is less that they are critical of him and more that they aren't equal opportunity critics. They took an 8-year break during the Obama administration, and as we saw with every single glowing profile of Beto O'Rourke, of Andrew Gillum, they are only hard on one party, and it's all determined by what letter you have after your name. So should Trump be as critical of the media asking legitimate questions about his presidency? I don't think so. Clearly, it resonates with his base. However, he's not wrong when he says that there is clearly a bias, not only in coverage, but also in tone and tenor.
Moving on to the election itself and the shift of power in Congress, do you think that the Republicans and the president will be able to get anything accomplished? I mean, do you think that they and the Democrats are going to try to work together?
So I'm going to remain hopeful. I think that if Nancy Pelosi wants to remain Speaker of the House, she knows that appealing to the most emotional and angriest portion of her base is not going to get much done for her or for her agenda. I think that strangely, if Republicans wanted to make any progress on healthcare and wanted to slow the Democrats' rapid ascent into all supporting single payer, Republicans would be wise to take some of what Trump's HHS has done in terms of price transparency for the pharmaceutical industry and for hospital pricing, and perhaps package those into actual congressional bills. And perhaps that could get done. It is populist enough that I think you could actually get some takers in the Democratic Party. But again, it remains to be seen. We don't even know who the speaker will be. But assuming that it is Nancy Pelosi, I think that perhaps she will realize that this is an opportunity.
What was the biggest surprise to you last night, Tiana?
So I think the fact that Democrats lost the 3 most hyped races that they were out for, the race against Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke's loss, and the Florida governor and Senate seat. The fact that all 3 of those, given the amount of media attention, given the amount of hype, I mean, honestly, I was not expecting Beto to win. However, I assumed that one of the seats in Florida, just given not only the media hype, but also the polling, would have been taken by a Democrat. But apparently, I mean, Republicans did well. I mean, those last-minute rallies by Trump probably did help.
And I think that viewers are becoming more savvy, even though what they're hearing and seeing in the mainstream media at times.
Definitely. I mean, I think with this media environment, you have to be a little careful about not only what network you're receiving your news from, but the individual reporters as well. Not all reporters are created equally.
All right. Tiana Lowe with the Washington Examiner. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It appears evangelicals made up at least 26% of the vote for the midterm, and in Florida it was reportedly among 30%, where Republicans won some tight races. Ralph Reed with the Faith and Freedom Coalition told CBN News during our election night coverage that the power of evangelical voters was on display in some of these key races.
We knew the evangelicals were coming. That's an extraordinary number, 30%. I assume that's in the network exit poll, David, the 30% number for Florida.
That's right. That's a CNN exit poll.
I'm going to have to go back and check it, but there's no precedent for that in the modern history of Florida. That's an extraordinary number. And I think the White House and the RGA and the National Republican Senatorial Committee and certainly Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott are very grateful tonight that the rapture didn't happen before early voting began, because if it had, they would have lost in a landslide. And the evangelicals delivered this vote in a big way.
Reed says more than 5,500 churches were involved in distributing voter guides in Florida. He also says the Faith and Freedom Coalition canvassed the I-4 corridor, knocked on almost 500,000 doors, and sent texts to 1 million voters daily ahead of the election in Florida. As Ralph Reed pointed out, in the states where evangelicals showed up above the national average, there were some big wins and upsets. Jenna Ellis is with the James Dobson Family Policy Institute. Jenna, we've been following the evangelical vote with you all week. First of all, your organization worked to get Christians to the polls. Do you agree with Ralph Reed?
I do, and I think it's amazing and wonderfully encouraging that out of the numbers that we're seeing, the self-identified conservative Christians were 35% of the vote and voted 86% with the GOP. So we're seeing that conservatives really are voting their values, and not only that, but voices like Dr. James Dobson are very important, and they're translating nationally into encouraging Christians to get out and vote.
Is the Christian vote strong enough? We know it was around 26% nationally and higher in some states, but what if more had gone to the polls?
Well, obviously, we want to encourage everyone and every evangelical Christian to get out and vote. And so hopefully, as these numbers are trending even higher, that means that more Christians are engaging in civil society, they're engaging in government, and they're recognizing that their vote really is making a difference. So I hope that for 2020, we'll see that trend go up even more.
Let's look ahead now. Will there be work starting today to even get more Christians to vote, like you said, for the 2020 presidential election?
Working on a statement right now that he will be encouraging Christians that, our work is never done. And even though we can see those trends and those increased numbers of getting out and vote, and we would see that is a success, we're having to look forward to 2020 and every other election in our lifetimes, because the American fundamental system of a constitutional republic is that we have to continue to protect and preserve liberty every single election and for every single generation to come. That's our moral responsibility.
Amen. Well, what are the biggest issues for families in the next 2 years that Dr. Dobson and your group will be working on? You talked a little bit about that. Can you elaborate some more?
Yeah, so we're working very closely, not only in Colorado, where we're located, with, of course, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission that we've discussed on this program before, with Masterpiece Cake Shop case and some of those issues with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, as well as nationally. And we're looking at religious liberty, freedom of conscience legislation, also defunding Planned Parenthood, which now will be much more of a challenge that the Democrats have control of the House, but also with the administration. We're very encouraged that the President Trump's administration has unparalleled access for faith-based leaders. And so we're partnering very closely to make sure that religious liberty and are advanced in conservative policy.
All right. Jenna Ellis with the Dobson Family Institute. Thanks again for your insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up, pro-life groups helped campaigns to keep conservative control of the House to promote their agenda. What the shift of power could mean for them. Welcome back. The pro-life movement took a hit with the swing of power in the House. CBN News Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon explained why in our election night coverage and pointed to how things could play out overall in the House.
Certainly one of the reasons evangelicals overwhelmingly sent President Trump to the White House is because he's pro-life. And I think tonight pro-life activists are feeling the wind being let out of their sails. Under a Democratic House, we're going to see a halt on the movement that they had been making over the past 2 years. The House have been working on a 20-week abortion ban. We're not going to see that continuing. The House is going to demand money for Planned Parenthood in the federal budget. And, you know, I think because there's not going to be a lot of governing over the next 2 years, it's going to be a lot easier for Republicans and Democrats to blame each other for gridlock and inaction. And as David pointed out, the Democratic base is not going to want them to work with President Trump. So I think we're going to see the House, instead of governing, using its subpoena power and going after the president that way. So it's going to be a very different environment on Capitol Hill. And I think immediately both parties are going to be looking towards 2020 and seeing how they can continuously one-up each other in terms of railing against each other.
Women made big gains in the election. More than 100 are projected to take seats in the House, where they've never held more than 84 seats. Former Naval Commander Elaine Luria was one of the winners. She beat out incumbent Scott Taylor with the help of the National Democratic Party that targeted the Virginia swing district. What also helped, a forgery scandal. Her opponent's staffers allegedly forged signatures to try and get another candidate on the ballot.
The Democrats poured a ton of money into this campaign, a ton of money into that negative ads on that particular issue. And they clearly had a ground game, a national-wide ground game. This was one of their targeted seats. They brought them in from all over the country, door knockers from all over the country. And they had a target on Scott's back, and that faux pas with trying to get the other candidate on the ballot came back to haunt them.
The outcome of the election last night is also a reflection of our culture. Joining us now to discuss that is Lynn Marie Combe with Regent University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time. First of all, what do you think about the vote among women, and what does it say about women in our society?
Well, I think women are not silent, and we care about what's happening in our culture. I think there was a whole lot more than meets the eye going on here. Yes, there was 100 new women. That's extremely exciting. I'm excited about the blue wave of pro-life voting. I totally think that God is calling more women into politics to protect the lives of women and children, especially over the Senate last night. There were so many indications that people care about judges, and judges choose to uphold abortion or life, things that matter to families, values, things like that.
When you said a blue wave among pro-life...
I didn't mean blue.
Okay.
I meant like water, like a washing wave of pro-life advocates. I don't think we saw that in Virginia, but I think we might see that across the country. A lot of the people that won Senate races are definitely pro-life people. And now they know that one of the hugest things is putting another justice on the Supreme Court. Should we have the opportunity, there could be two others. The Kavanaugh hearings just made such a big difference in everybody's mind. First of all, was he really being targeted because he was an abuser of women? Well, no. Now we have 414 pages of investigatory evidence by Congress that says there's no evidence of any of the accusations. Really what was going on there was a fear that he might vote against abortion rights.
Do you think the nation's going to be able to unify, Lynn Marie, and step away from the political divide?
You know, I would hope so, because in my mind, the life issue protects women and children. 3 states had it on their ballots as well. I think it was West Virginia, Oregon, and Alabama. They were all trying to determine how far do we want to go with allowing for choice. And most of those ballots were all about protecting women and protecting children. I think the Gosnell movie had a huge impact with that too. But really it was the Kavanaugh hearings. People know judges matter, judges make a difference. Judges can be thoughtful and protect life, protect the lives of women. Every single woman and child needs to be protected regardless of what the state chooses to have as its law for abortion.
And quickly, let's move over to the House. What are your thoughts on that? Because of the shift in power, do you think that's going to hurt the pro-life movement somewhat?
I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. When we went to vote yesterday, my husband asked somebody on a local election, so is your candidate pro-life or not? And the person said, oh, it doesn't matter, it's a local election. And my husband said, it absolutely matters, it goes to worldview. We didn't get a chance to find out the worldview of a lot of those House of Representatives candidates because there was so many running. So we'll have to see how this plays out. And I do think that some are still persuadable that life is an issue they want to take a position on that will protect women and children. So we'll just have to see.
All right. Lynn Marie Cohn with Regent University. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, still ahead, the latest on the immigrant caravan now in Mexico City. The migrant caravan is still making its way north from Honduras and has reportedly now made it as far as Mexico City. Chuck Holton has been keeping us posted on the caravan's progress, and he joins us now from El Paso, Texas, with the latest. Chuck, we hear American troops have arrived at the border ahead of the caravan. What are they doing to prepare?
Yeah, that's right. They are setting up barriers. They're putting up fencing and wire. They are doing some crowd control exercises, getting ready for a large influx of people. But in reality, there's a lot of people coming already right here in El Paso, in the El Paso sector. In the last 12 months, they've captured about 28,000 irregular migrants, as people coming in illegally or presenting themselves here at this port of entry or one of like them. In this area, 28,000 people. Now, 18,000 of those were not Mexican migrants. That means they were mostly Latin American, but not Mexican, although there's about 5% or so that they call exotics, come from all over the world.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that makeup. You've been right there with the caravan for most of that time. So again, I think the perception is that, the vast majority is from Latin America. Kind of break it down a little bit more for us. Who are we talking about? Who actually is heading our way?
Yeah, we at any given time, and you have to think of these caravans as not one event or not one group of people. They're saying that the caravan is now sort of dwindled. It's not really dwindled. It's just spread out more along the road, as some people get rides and some people don't. Some people rest and some people don't. Right now, that particular group, the original caravan, as they called it, is probably up to around 12,000 people. But it's made up mostly of military-age males, as I would say, and probably 20% or less females or children. And of their nationality, the majority are from that northern triangle of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. But in reality, when I was in Tapachula just last week, I've met people from Nepal, I met people from India, Pakistan, Somalia, Eritrea, Cameroon, all over Africa, and all making their way north for the border of the United States, trying to take advantage of the fact that Donald Trump has been unable to really implement the policy that he wanted to implement because he's been stymied by the courts.
And we understand you do have new information from the border about the demographic makeup of illegal immigrants detailed at the U.S. border in the last fiscal year. What have you discovered?
Yeah, what we're talking about is, like I say, about in this sector, 28,000 that they either presented themselves for asylum or were captured crossing illegally. 18,000 of those were migrants from other than Mexico. So that it was mostly made up of Latin American migrants from those Northern Triangle countries and some smaller percentage, about 5% or so, of people that are from all over the world, literally all over the world. There are people that are right now trekking through the Darien jungle between Colombia and Panama on their way north that have come over on ships from Africa or the Middle East or Asia, all hoping soon to make it to the United States.
All right, Chuck Holton reporting from El Paso. Thanks, Chuck.
Yep, good talking to you.
You too. Coming up, the latest tunes by For King and Country with a little clip from a Studio 5 interview. Thanks for staying with us. For King and Country recently came out with a new album called Burn the Ships. Studio 5's Ephraim Graham sat down with them to talk about it and what inspired them. Here's a peek.
And if you need a refuge, I will be right here. ties, send a flare into the night. Say a prayer, turn the tide, dry your tears and wave goodbye.
The new project, Burn the Ships. What does that mean?
My wife and I have got 3 kids, and when she was pregnant with our middle son, Phoenix, she was having a bunch of morning sickness, a bunch of nausea, and so she went to the doctor, and they said, hey, we can help you with that. Here's some medicine to eliminate the nausea. And for about 6 weeks, it worked. And then she went back and said, hey, it's not working anymore, and they gave her more medicine and upped the dosage. And I was in Austin, Texas with a show that night, and she calls me, and she says, hey, I need you to come home. And she says, I've been taking this medicine, and I just can't stop. And so they prescribed her outpatient therapy for about 2 weeks, and so I'd drop her off at 9 a.m. in the morning, pick her up at 2, and she'd shown so much improvement in 2 weeks. They said, hey, you're free to go, and you've done tremendously well. And soon after that, she had that bottle of pills at home. And she said, Luke, I need to go and take these pills. I need to go and just flush them, because these pills represent so much guilt and so much shame in my life. And I remembered a story many years ago about an explorer who was going to a new land, and when he arrived to explore this land, to explore the horizon in all of these ships, he realized that the men didn't want to follow him because they wanted to stay even in the dirty confines of these boats just because it was comfortable, not because it was good. And easy, right? And so soon after that, he calls them back onto the shoreline again. He said, I want every soldier on the shoreline. And once he got all of his soldiers on the shoreline, he gave the command, hey, burn the ships.
And you can find the full interview at our website, cbnnews.com, and look for it on the Studio 5 and Entertainment page. You can also find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com, and tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. And you can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com, or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Lots of ways to find us all over social media. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.